Resistance is something that everyone experiences at some point, but what you do when that resistance surfaces is going to make or break what kind of successful outcomes you have. You are listening to Amplify Your Success podcast, episode 355. And today I'm going to help you slay the resistance dragons that are showing up, that are holding you back from leaping to this next level of success. You ready for this? Let's get started. Welcome to the Amplify Your Success podcast. Get ready to ramp up your revenue, amplify your impact, and make your mark in the world. This is the show for experts, thought leaders, and service professionals who want to shatter their limits and achieve that next level. You're going to find out from other experts and influencers how they made it. Now, let's get amplified. Hey there, expert entrepreneurs and business leaders. It is your host, Melanie Benson, authority amplifier and possibility igniter. And today we're talking about resistance. Now, I'm bringing up resistance today because I've been having a ton of conversations in a lot of different environments and witnessing firsthand where resistance kicks in and how even the most talented, most powerful, and most capable expert entrepreneurs can fall into resistance and not do the very things that will actually propel their success forward. Whether it has to do with making more money, being more visible, serving more of your ideal audience, playing a bigger game, whatever that looks like, resistance can come up for anybody. And so I want to go through today the signs you might be in some sneaky form of resistance and how to overcome it if it does show up. And also, what are some of the root causes that keep you locked in resistance instead of jumping into successful outcomes? Now, before I get into all of these amazing little nuggets of wisdom today, I want to make sure that you have a resource in your hands. And this resource is my 7-step framework that will add another $100,000, $500,000, maybe even $1 million to your business this year. And the framework is the same framework I have used over and over and over again to leap out of being a best kept secret and be a recognizable expert that people can't wait to work with. It's like the automatic yes. So I will walk you through what these 7 steps are, plus a bonus, and show you how to put these puzzle pieces together so you stop feeling invisible, even though you're massively capable, and start breaking into multiple 6 and 7 figures by doing what you were born to do. Does that sound good to you? Head to amplifywithmelanie.com, download the easy to follow framework, and watch for some tips that'll come along to help you implement what's in that framework. Today, we're talking about resistance, and I'll share a personal story about resistance, and maybe you can relate to this, that you can know that something is going to work, but you can also find a whole billion reasons why you shouldn't do it, can't do it, won't do it. It's not in alignment. It doesn't feel good. It seems hard. It's kind of icky. You following me? I recently have gone through my mentor's training program and learned a new technique. And it's something I've known about for a really long time. I've actually bought trainings on it before. And for some reason, it never quite came together, and I had all kinds of resistance to it. And as I joined the program, I was recognizing, I've got to learn this. It's time to do it differently. I threw all of my resistance of, I can figure this out on my own, and I don't need help, and blah, 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 right? I threw all of that to the side, and I said, I'm all in. I'm doing this process. I'm going to learn everything. And guess what? Resistance kicked in. At week 3, at week 6, right? Like it kept coming back up. And one of the things that I thought was so powerful is we made resistance part of the conversations. And I realized we're talking about resistance all the time in Ignite Mastermind. We talk about resistance all the time in the 100K Authority Accelerator, but I hadn't really talked about resistance here on the podcast, and that perhaps you may be experiencing either some conscious or unconscious resistance to the very things that will actually propel your impact and your income and your influence to new levels. So I think it's worth talking about what some signs are. And by the way, there's a billion of them, right? I may or may not cover one that you're in, but here are some signs that potentially resistance is in the way. Now, the thing about resistance is it masks itself as logic. It masks itself as a really, really good reason not to do something. It will disguise itself as confusion or busyness. And so there are all these things that seem very real that are actually you being in resistance to the thing that you say you want to accomplish. And especially if you are considering investing in yourself this year, investing in coaching, mentoring, a mastermind, an accelerated program, a team member, a marketing strategy, whatever the thing is, when there is money on the line, the resistance can go up exponentially, and we will literally talk ourselves out of doing the very thing that needs to happen because there's all these reasons why. And so that's actually sign number one, is even though there's something you say you want to make more money, you want to have more visibility, you want to be on bigger stages, you want to have a bigger presence, you want to have more authority, right? Whatever that thing is, you tend to find a lot of really good reasons, aka excuses, for not pursuing it, for not investing in it, for not moving it forward. And those reasons play with your logic. They tend to be rational and practical reasons. But here's the thing, doing something really amazing in this world is rarely the result of taking logical, practical action. It's just, these are not two things that normally go together. You're going to have to defy the odds, and you're going to have to play outside your comfort zone. You're going to have to do things that feel a little scary, but when you do them, you become a new version of yourself. So if you tend to come up with all kinds of reasons why something doesn't work for you, or why you can't do it, or why you don't have the money, why you can't invest, blah, 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 right? You get the point. This is why you are probably got some resistance that's coming up, and it may be unconscious resistance. You tend to talk about this goal or this outcome or doing something differently or achieving some milestone, but you never make time for it. This is another really common attribute of people who are in resistance, is they talk a big game, but they don't do it. And I have a couple of people who I've coached over the years who said, yes, I want to like elevate my authority, and I want to create a conversation about blah, 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 right? I want to be a thought leader and a movement maker, but then they don't do the work. They don't actually put it in action. They let all this stuff get in their head about it, and then they don't do it, right? So if you are talking about things but don't make time for it, that's probably a sign. And then kind of a sister issue, or cousin issue, if you will, is you tend to be really, really busy, massively busy, all kinds of stuff going on. But if you're really honest, it's like you're chasing a ball around a parking lot, and the ball never gets to the destination. It just keeps bouncing around in the bumpers of this parking lot, and you never move it anywhere. So what that means is you're busy all the time with lots of activity that aren't actually producing a result that has meaning and value to you or the business. So you're just busy. You're busy, not productive. You're busy, not taking action. You're busy being busy. And a lot of people develop this energy of being busy that actually doesn't produce results. And by the way, if you follow human design, there are a couple of human design strategies, usually in the generator realm, that tend to be busy all the time, but don't always have that busyness directed towards tangible results. So there's oftentimes kind of like a blueprint, an energetic blueprint behind that. And another sign that I actually watch for this one when I'm talking with people who are potentially going to join, especially the 100K 30 Accelerator, you tend to blame other people for your lack of results. So this ties a little bit into the victim energy, the victim mentality. And by the way, sometimes there are reasons why you're not moving the needle forward. There are people that are getting in your way. But where I like to see people lean into is, this happened, And I'm taking ownership of doing it differently or better or finding the way that will work and not delegating my failure to somebody else, right? I'm not handing off ownership of why something's not working because I invested in the wrong coach or I invested in a team member that didn't work out or blah, 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 right? My spouse is not on board or I have people who are sucking the life out of me in my personal life. And so I don't really get to do A, B, or C. Look, we all have stuff. We all have people in our lives in some way, shape, or form that can be counterproductive to results. And if you're really in a crappy place with that right now, I just want to say, I get it. I have been to hell and back with people in my way. But one of the things that I would invite you to look at is where you are handing off responsibility to someone else instead of stepping into ownership of your destiny. And there is a fine line between giving our power away and maintaining agency of what we want in our life. And that is your choice. So these are some of the signs. You also may find that you set lots of goals and you have lots of ideas and lots of visions about what's possible, but they don't ever materialize. And oftentimes you get wrapped up in, I don't know how to do it, or I don't feel like I have the resources to do it. And so today is the invitation to face that dragon, if you will, head on and move through it. So how do we overcome? Well, first of all, we have to identify what's really behind this resistance. And there's all kinds of reasons. I got trained in neurolinguistic programming and hypnosis in 2002, and I found this to be a very powerful tool in my toolbox for myself, but also for my clients to help people really uncover the hidden contributors to resistance and all the things, right? So here are some of the things that I find get in the way, that when we're in them, we actually tend to collect evidence over and over and over again. We collect these issues, if you will, to support the belief that we cannot accomplish the goal. And this is not a conscious thing, it's a very unconscious thing. But if you really start to study how resistance works, we almost always have a lot of evidence that something is not possible. The number one root cause of resistance is there's some fear about the outcome or the approach, the path. So fear of success, fear of failure, any of that. I think we all really get the place that fear has, but where we want to really look at fear is when fear starts to disguise itself as logic, and we let logic and practicality and the part of us that's rational talk us out of going for something because we can't let that fear go. And so fear is just a part of us that has a need for clarity. It has a need for information. And oftentimes, this is where the NLP part comes in. I find that when I work with my clients who have a lot of fear coming up, if we can identify where the decision was to let fear be a stop sign, then we can start to work with the unconscious mind because the unconscious mind doesn't want to change. It doesn't want anything to be different. And so if we can start to identify what's triggering fear, we can usually move into one of the other resourceful steps I'm going to outline today. So there's fear, there's conflict. So conflict basically means achieving the outcome on some level feels like it's in conflict with something else that's important to you. So it might be, I have a client who he really struggles with taking new action when he gets into conflict about this might take my time for me. So I'm not willing to sacrifice my time for me to do something new that I don't know if is going to work. And so many years ago, I was standing on a stage. This was pre-pandemic. And I was talking about mindset in this community of entrepreneurs. And one of the women in the audience said to me, she said, I'm stuck. Like, I can't get past, she'd hit 200,000 a year and she couldn't get past it. She really wanted to create a multi-million-dollar business and have a much greater impact. And she's like, nothing I'm doing is working. And so when we dug into it, which was really interesting to do from the stage to the audience, she basically recognized that she had this conflict, that she couldn't see how to be the best mom and the best at her job and her entrepreneurship. So conflict means I don't know how to achieve both things simultaneously. And so the key here is to recognize that you're letting conflict stop you, and it's time to find a way for both of them to be in harmony. Now, might mean that something has to shift in how you get there. Another client of mine many years ago, he wanted to be speaking more. He wanted to be out there in the world, having a greater impact. And he had this, he was a great, compelling speaker, and he had a lot of influence in his industry. But his wife was like, I don't want you gone all the time. We have 5 kids. And he wanted to be home with his children. And so he found that to be more visible, to have a voice, and to be able to have the impact he wanted, he had to find a way to grow his reach of his message without being on the road. And eventually we uncovered, well, what about a TV show? And so this was way before the live streaming version of the shows that we have today. But he felt that part of his ambition was met by taking his message into his TV show. Control issues. So sometimes the root cause of resistance is control. And it may be not knowing how. And so you have this fear, again, of not knowing how to do something. And so your control, which is really ego mind, is much stronger than your willingness to get messy and to do some things that don't work. And it may also just be that you need everything to be a very specific way. And if you don't have it that specific way, then you feel loss of control. And that is very scary for you. So sometimes control issues come up. I mentioned not knowing how. Well, not knowing how is probably one of the top 3 reasons people don't get out of resistance, because they're like, I don't know. How do I say it? What do I do? I find this a lot with people who want to increase the revenues, but they don't have sales conversations. And when I unpack it a little bit more, it's because they don't really know what to say. And so not knowing what to say, they just stop. They don't do anything. And where the opportunity is to, first of all, invest in clarity and get some support, but also to recognize, like, you don't always have to know how. You just have to be willing to take the first steps. And then we figure it out as we go sometimes. That's kind of what my path has been. Self-doubt, especially when it comes to investing in yourself. If you have a track record of not following through, or you've made some bad investments, and I hear this all the time. I've made several bad investments in mentors that weren't right for me, and I feel like all this money's going out and nothing's coming back. It starts to create self-doubt. And that self-doubt causes you to believe that you don't have what it takes, or that you can't be trusted to make investment decisions and all this stuff. When really what's going on, the resistance to investing is just literally you have not collected wins, you've collected fails, you've collected excuses, you've collected what's not working. And so if self-doubt is playing out, there is a very specific shift to that. We're not actually going to get into this one too deep today, but just know that self-doubt, or just doubt in general, is just a sign that there's a fear that's unresolved. And last, believing that the how is going to be too hard or out of alignment. So going back to my story earlier, one of the things that kept coming up for me was feeling like this feels out of alignment with who I am. And really the strategy, and this has to do with how we leverage social media and how we build relationships with people on social media. Part of it was I just had never found a way to do it that was in my voice and was in alignment. So here's the thing, when something works, but you feel like it's out of alignment, then chances are it just needs to be massaged so that it is aligned, or you need to be willing to be outside your comfort zone to achieve new outcomes. Because whatever you have right now as an outcome is what you are good at, because you're good at what you got right now. That's why you have it. And if you want new outcomes, sometimes we have to get good at new things. We have to get good at new strategies, new ways of thinking, new habits, and new ways of running a business. So these are some of the common root causes I see come up. I'd be curious If you know of something that I didn't cover, you're welcome to drop into the DMs wherever you're listening to this, or pop into the Amplify Your Authority community and let us know, like, what are you seeing some root causes of resistance? So now, how do we overcome the resistance when it's there? So first of all, identify it. We've covered some things, could be something else. But the next thing you have to do is you have to shift your awareness, because what we focus on expands. And when you fill your mind, or whatever you fill your mind with, I should say, influences every decision and every action you take or do not take. So if you are filling your mind with, I don't know how, this feels hard, I don't have time, this feels creepy, or whatever you're making up about something, that's what you're going to put out in the energetic frequency, and that's what you're going to expand on. You're going to keep feeling those things. You're going to keep attracting and collecting evidence to support that. And so if you want new outcomes, you have to shift your focus. You have to shift your focus to what you do want. And who do I have to be? What do I have to be willing to do differently to be the person that automatically experiences that? We did a huge, big, deep dive at the Ignite Mastermind Retreat this year, all about who do we have to become, where the level of financial abundance and prosperity that they have their intention set on was automatic. What is the version of me where that already exists? And like, how do we step into that? And it's very interesting when you really look at it as, I'm not doing some things I could be doing. And I'm not taking ownership. I'm not living in the agency of the person who that would be normal for. And it always comes back to us. So shift your focus. Who do I have to be? You might also want to ask some questions like, why is having this outcome important? There is a why behind it. There is something that you believe will be better, or an impact you can have, or a level of income. And so reconnect to the why. And by doing this, how will it add value to my life? We get very hyper focused on outcomes, but there is also a process of who we're becoming and the richness of what it is that I get to be by learning how to do something that's new and different, by expanding our capacity and our capability. And then last, maybe you need to ask yourself, how will this add value to the lives of others? Going back to human design for a moment, there are two types of people. We have a heart center, and whether that heart center is what's called defined or undefined, whether that energy is open or closed, neither one is bad. It just means we relate to the impact we're having in the world differently. And so you will often find that you don't know why you're being called to do something, but you have to do it because there's a part of you that's being called to greatness. But it's scary, and so the resistance may get really big. So you have to stop focusing on what you have to do and really step into doing these things, getting out of my comfort zone or stretching myself in this way is who I'm supposed to become to pull off this next level of impact and income. So it might be you need to focus on the desired outcome. It may be that you need to focus on, I'm being grown. I'm being stretched and expanded right now, and just embrace it instead of fighting it, and lean into the messy, uncomfortable pieces and say, this is a journey. There's something I'm supposed to learn from and grow with here. Okay, so shift your focus, shift it off of the problems and the challenges and the fears and the blah, 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 right? The excuses, and really lean into hey, what's the version of me where this is already happening, where this is already done? And what do I have to do differently to live in that space? And also just really finding the growth in it is a great way to shift the focus. Next is literally the bottom line is decide. You have to decide that you are going to be the person and you're going to have the thing in order to shift things. Resistance does not resolve itself by pushing yourself, by using habit trackers, by planning. You can create the best plan. As a matter of fact, I've worked on strategic plans with people over the years and nothing changed because they didn't commit. They weren't all in. They were just interested in something. And so I found one of two things has to happen. And this, again, depends a lot on who you are and what motivates you. But you either need to chunk up and get really big and bold. Like oftentimes when people are stuck in a resistance because it's not big enough. There's a part of it that's too easy. It's too common. It's too much a part of what you already do. And it's like, it's just causing you to take a tiny shift and you're bored. Like there's nothing pulling you at a big enough level. So some people need to really chunk up and go much bigger and play much more outside their comfort zone. And some people need to chunk down. They need to focus on the minute, what's next, what's next, what's next? What can I move forward? Even if I don't know what the whole picture is, I just need to move the next thing forward. And you really need to know what kind of person you are. And you may need to do some of both. You may need to play a much bigger game, really take some bold action, especially, again, going back to human design. If you know your human design and you're a manifester, you need a much bigger game. Your language is about bold. And if you're not playing bold, you're probably, you're in the easy lane and you're just disengaged. Play big and then create a roadmap. Next, you need to activate what I like to call the snowball effect. So if you think about, if you've ever been to a ski slope, or you've been to the snow, or you live somewhere where there's snow, you know the snowball effect. And the snowball effect is if you're at the top of the mountain and you start to create a little bit of a snowball and you push it down the mountain, it should start to gain momentum. And as it does, it grows bigger and bigger and bigger. I've actually proven this out a little bit by rolling down a mountain with my skis on. Laughing all the way. It was very funny, but not very fun when my bruises came in later. But you get my point. The snowball effect is how do you get something started so that it gains momentum and grows as it gets momentum. So the snowball effect for you, and sometimes this is the best way to just do the snowball effect. And again, you're going to commit, you're going to decide, I'm all in, I'm just going to get started. And so you're going to block out a little space and you're going to do something that activates your best focus and energy. If you're into human design, we all have something that quick starts that energy for us. You want to do that. It could be your superpower. It could be something that makes you feel good. It may be having that cup of coffee, whatever it is. Do something that gets you in your best energy and then just get into momentum. So you might stack some light activities together and just bust out the piece right now. And the key is don't do a 15-minute increment. Give yourself a chunk of time, an hour, 2 hour, a half day. I actually get my best results in a half day or a full day momentum day. And that is, boom, you're going to do the whole thing from start to finish. You just immerse yourself in it and you let that energy build momentum. And that is where I find that snowball effect is going to move mountains very fast. Now, you may need some clarity to be able to do that well. So you might need to get with a coach. If you're working with me, great. We need to get the clarity and then you get into momentum. So a lot of times when I'm working with clients, we will actually map out their strategic plan and say, okay, your momentum day is going to be on this. And they just bust it out as fast as they can. And by the way, this is one of the things I found. We reworked what used to be Guest Expert System and transformed it into what we're now lovingly and excitingly calling the 100K at 3 Accelerator, because one thing we're doing differently is creating momentum bursts where there are things that are basically historically been hard for people to finish on their own. So we create an entire day for someone to do their magnetic money talk, or a full day working with their group and working in this virtual environment to bust out what their core offer is. And so that there's clarity, but there's guidance along the way. So whatever works for you, figure out a way to get started, stack activities together, kick it off with being in your best energy and build momentum. My last tip for you around this is all of this is a billion times easier when you surround yourself with like-minded people who are on a similar journey. So I know there are people that are distractions and there are people who are activators. An activator can be a coach who's in it with you. An activator could be a mastermind partner, or it could be a mastermind group. It could be if you're in a cohort of some kind and everybody's working this process together. This is very powerful because you're having a similar conversation, you have similar goals, and you have usually a timeline together where everybody's building momentum together. Again, that's one of the things we've been doing with the 100K Authority Accelerator is creating that accountability and momentum. Now, why is this going to be important for you? Because when you get into that snowball effect, when you're with other people who are in their snowball effects, there's this like energy that builds and you like, you don't want to fail. Like you get back in it and people are going to hold you accountable. Your coach holds you accountable. There's momentum that it's like a rising tide that lifts all the boats together. And last, like this is normally what's happening is you start to collect wins and progress and you stop giving excuses for things. Because first of all, everybody wants to win. Everybody wants to see everybody succeed. And you're going to be so focused on how do I overcome the obstacles rather than staying stuck in them. And this is why it's really hard to create momentum when you're figuring stuff out on your own. It's super hard. First of all, you're in your own head. You're probably overthinking things. You're making up excuses and they're your excuses. So of course they're valid to you. But other people aren't going to let you live there. I'm not going to let you live there. I don't want you to keep your excuses. I want you to collect wins. I want you to keep that amazing impact and the income that comes with it. And I want you to be successful at it, whatever that looks like for you. So surround yourself with people who are more committed to you winning than maybe you are. And if that might look like the 100K Authority Accelerator this year, let's chat. Reach out wherever you're listening to this, or you can hit me up in the DMs on any social media platform, and I will be happy to help you raise your game and shatter some limits. I want to hear from you. What did you get out of this today? What's the resistance that you keep having getting in the way? Promise it's just between me and you. I won't share any names. I won't share any important details, but say it out loud. Get it out of your head and out into someone that can help you break free of it. Thanks for tuning in today, Amplifier. Be sure to join us right now in the Amplify Your Authority community at authorityamplifiers.com, and I'll share my 7 proven tips to be a highly paid expert that stands out in a crowded market. Plus, we're going to keep this conversation going, and I want to hear from you how you're going to amplify your authority and make a greater impact. Before you go, please take a minute to give our show and our guests some love over on your favorite podcasting platform. Subscribe, rate, and review. Leave your full name, and I'll spotlight you and your authority on social media.